Exercise 303 looks at bonuses, allowances, and annual leave loading. Now, all three of those are payments that you receive in addition to your wage or salary. Let's look at each individual one. A bonus is, as it says here, an extra payment for a job. It may just be an extra payment because it's Christmas, as you can see here, and the employer believes that the people working for him have done a really good job. Maybe sales have been very good close to Christmas, and he's happy to give them a bonus, a share of the profit. Bonuses may be given also just because. It may not be a special time of the year, but it's just that workers have worked extremely hard to get a new product out into the market. So not even selling lots of them yet, but working really hard to get that done. Workers may have worked back and on top of work getting overtime, they are paid an additional amount called a bonus. They're usually one-off. It's not like it's regular, and it could vary in amount from time to time. So that's a bonus. Now that's different to an allowance. Allowances are paid again on top of wages or salaries, but allowances are for things like having a uniform washed, a laundry allowance, and some of you may experience that. You may have to wear a uniform and you get a small amount of money for getting it laundered. Allowances are also paid for working in unpleasant conditions. For example, if you were working in cramped spaces, very small spaces. For example, if you were a plumber and you had to work underneath a house, if you were a window cleaner and you were working in outside, obviously cleaning windows on very tall buildings. If you are even a shift worker working night duty, you're often paid an additional allowance because it's very inconvenient to work all night and have to sleep during the day. So their allowances, they're paid in addition, and they could be paid on a regular basis. If you're regularly working night shift, if you're regularly working underground in a mine, you may be paid these allowances. So they seem a little bit more regular than a bonus, a one-off bonus. And then there's annual leave loading. Now, this is fairly unique to Australia in that in Australia we get this additional holiday pay. And what happens is that once a year, and for we school teachers, it's paid at mid-December, and we get an additional, and all employees in Australia are entitled to an additional 17.5% of 4 weeks' pay. So the total of 4 weeks' pay is calculated. 17% of that is then found, and that is the amount for the annual leave loading or holiday loading. It's only paid once a year. You may be granted holiday loading or annual leave loading mid-year, end of year, when you take your holiday during the year, but it is only paid once a year. So let's have a look at an example. A construction worker in an isolated area, so this is looking more like an allowance, earns a weekly wage of $1,200 plus a site allowance of $104.80 per week, a meal allowance per day, a height allowance per hour. If she works 9 hours a day for 5 days, calculate her total weekly pay. It's really, really important to pay attention to every little bit of detail in this question. Some allowances are paid weekly. Some allowances, as we saw, are paid hourly. We really have to pay attention to this detail. And it will just be aware that it could be different every question you come across. So be prepared for that. So a construction worker earns a weekly wage of $1,280. A site allowance per week. There'll only be one of those, because remember we're finding her weekly pay. A meal allowance of this per day. A height allowance of this per hour. She works 9 hours, that's important, over 5 days. Calculate her total weekly pay. So after underlining the key points in the worded question, begin your solution with taking what you've underlined and writing a little bit about it, trying to identify it mathematically. So you can see weekly wage was this, the site allowance was this per week, the meal allowance was given per day. So it's really important to register that it was per day. So I've just abbreviated that to meal allowance. We saw further on through the question that the pay was over a 5-day week. So if he's getting this per day, we multiply it by 5 to get his meal allowance per week. Height allowance was given per hour. So we know his height allowance will be that much times 9, because he works 9 hours for 1 day, but then take all of that and multiply it by 5 because he's working for 5 days. So he gets a total height allowance of $250 each week. Then finally we're able to find the total weekly pay by taking the wage, site allowance, meal allowance and height allowance and adding them all together. And with the next example, you can see that I have highlighted again the key points. Hayden earns a yearly salary. So important to highlight and note that we're now talking salary, because we know that we must consider there are 52.18 weeks in a year because we're dealing salary. The salary is $46,588. Of course that's important. Here's the question. Calculate his holiday loading, and it tells you what it is. It is 17.5% of the normal pay for 4 weeks. Give your answer correct to the nearest cent. So, as I've been doing in all previous solutions, I now take what I've underlined and write it out. So, salary equals 46,598, and here in brackets I've also put what I'm registering because it's a salary. Because it's a salary, there'll be these 52.18 weeks. Write it down so that you don't have to have that just lingering in your memory. If you've got it written down here, you can see it. Wrote then the next thing I'd underlined, which was what I'm finding, the holiday loading. Now, it's been made very easy for you because the question went on to tell you what the holiday loading actually is. Holiday loading, it says, is equal to 17.5% times 4 weeks' pay. So what I have to do now, obviously, is to work out 1 week's pay. And the way I do that is to take the salary and, like I've been saying, divide it by this 52.18. As you can see there on the calculator, 46598 divided by 52.18 gives this 893.02. Now, they're dollars, obviously, $893 and many decimal points for cents. I'm going to go straight to working out 4 weeks' pay. So 4 weeks' pay is this then times 4. Which you can see there is 3,572.096, and we would round that to the nearest cent, and so it's 3572.10. And once I have the amount for 4 weeks' pay, then I can come back to this statement, which is holiday loading is 17.5%. Now, instead of just writing 4 weeks' pay, I've worked that out, which is my 357.210. Remember, 17.5% divided by 100 to get the decimal. Put that multiplied by that amount and you get the holiday loading. You should be right to try some of the easier questions in 10.3.